So in Ross chapter 17, we're dealing with what's called the imperfect. In our earlier chapters where we started learning about the verbs, we learned the cow perfect conjugation pattern. And here we learn about something called the imperfect. Let me just mention something about some terminology here. Do you remember how in the perfect conjugation, Hebrew uses a set of suffixes or personal endings to indicate who the subject is, right? There's no modifications of the front by way of any prefixes. It's modifying through suffixes, through attachments at the end. Pakad has a no ending. He appointed. Pakada, add a comma te to the end. That makes it she appointed, and so forth. Because of the fact that the perfect conjugation uses suffixes to indicate the subject, it's often referred to by grammarians as the suffix conjugation. Okay? So I've written that down here for you, the suffix conjugation, because we modify the subject through suffixes. This is the way languages like Spanish work as well. Hablo, hablas, habla, right? The endings change to indicate it's I speak, you speak, he speaks. In the imperfect conjugation, we're going to indicate the subject primarily by prefixes, by things attached to the front of the verbal root, not so much to the end. There will be some endings as well, but primarily it's through prefixing. And I'm going to introduce you to those in just a moment. But just by way of terminology, again, because we indicate the subject through prefixing, the imperfect conjugation is also described as the prefix conjugation. Okay, so the suffix conjugation is the perfect. The prefix conjugation would be the imperfect. Now, when we deal with the imperfect, the word imperfect, the M means not perfect. And that's being contrasted with the idea of something being perfect or perfective. In grammar, if something is perfective or perfect, it's thought of as completed. Okay? Imperfective, the idea there is then not completed or not being viewed or portrayed as completed. So in English, I could say things like, I ate a hamburger. When I tell you I ate a hamburger, what is your assumption? That I finished eating it or not? Yes, okay. And that would be what's called perfective aspect in grammar. I could also use a past tense form and say something like, I was eating a hamburger. Now, am I portraying that eating activity as completed or finished? I was eating a hamburger when the boulder fell on me. No. Okay, I'm presenting that action as both past but in process at the time. Usually I use a form like that when I want to tell you that something then happened to me. Okay, that is imperfective aspect. Imperfective aspect portrays an action as ongoing or habitual, but not viewing it as a completed whole. And if you remember, when we talked about the perfect conjugation, we said that usually the perfect conjugation is past tense, but not always, right? You can't always just assume a perfect verb is supposed to be translated past time. The imperfect conjugation, because it portrays action as not complete, is the one that is usually used for future action, because by definition, an action that is future hasn't been done yet, right? But the imperfect tense can also be used for past action that was going on. So you could translate an imperfect verb as he was eating or he will eat, okay? And sometimes it's present tense. He eats as a matter of habit. So this is a bit different from English, because English has a verbal system that is really tied to tense, right? The forms indicate tense, not so much with Hebrew. So you have to be a little bit more flexible there. But most of the time in our translations, we'll translate the imperfect with a future form. But I just want to remind you that it could be past progressive in value also. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Okay. So if you remember, The perfect conjugation verbs are all marked for person, gender, number. Person is either first, second, or third. What's the difference between these? First person refers to who? Yeah, myself as the speaker. And if I'm plural, like me and someone else together, then it's we, right? So either I or we. Second person is always who? You. And the you is either singular or plural, and the you is either masculine or feminine. And then everybody else is what person? Third. He, she, it, they. And then any other name or noun, right? The bird dropped some droppings. The bird would be what person? Third. If I said you bird dropped some droppings where they don't belong, then I'd be using second person because I'm talking to a you. Now here is how the imperfect conjugation is going to be slightly different from the perfect conjugation. In the imperfect, we have 3ms and 3fs, he or it, she or it, 2ms, 2fs, you male, you female, 1cs, I. That's all the same as the perfect conjugation. But over here is where we're different. Remember how they in the perfect conjugation was third common plural. That is, if the subject was a they and they were all men, I'm going to use the same form as if they were all women. It's shuric either way. But in the imperfect conjugation, there are actually different forms for those. The third masculine plural they will be a slightly different form than a third feminine plural they. Okay? There will be 2MP and 2FP for you all, male or mixed group, and you all, female. 2FP and 1CP is we. So those are the same person gender numbers that we know. How they're formed, though, is going to be different because, again, we're using the prefixing that I'm going to show you right now. Now, what you have here is a layout of all the person gender numbers that the imperfect conjugation uses and marks for the subject. Just like in the perfect conjugation, we always start with the third masculine singular form, and then we go from there down to the first person. Notice here that what I've got is just a chart of the prefixes, okay? These boxes stand for any 3 root letters of any verb that has 3 root letters. So take pakad, for example, our paradigm verb that means to appoint or to visit. The yod that marks third masculine singular, he does something or will do something, that's going to go before the root 1 letter pay in pakad. All right? Now, this is a generic or a general sort of chart because in reality, I'm going to have real consonants here for each verb, and there's going to be vowel pointing here, okay? I'm not using the vowel points here, and I'm just showing you the prefixes and the suffixes because these are going to apply to all the stems of the Hebrew verbal system. Right now, we're only learning the cal stem, so we're going to plug in the vowel points that go with the cal. Soon, we're going to learn the nifal stem, which makes the cal verbs meaning passive. We're going to learn the PL and the pual stems and so forth. The good news is that they're going to use all the same prefixes, okay? Just different vowel pointing to distinguish one stem from another. So once you learn this, you've learned the imperfect for all the stems of the Hebrew verbal system, and there are 7 main ones that we're going to learn. Again, we're just dealing with the cal here. So look at the prefixes here. If I have a yod before root 1 and nothing after it, so we'll just make the little null symbol here for 0 ending, then this means he will do whatever that verb root means, okay? So if it were pakad, it would be yifkod, and it would mean he will visit or appoint. If I put a tav before the first root letter with no ending, then that makes it third feminine singular. She will do whatever that verb means, okay? If I have a tav with no ending, that could also be 2ms, second masculine singular, and that would mean you man will do something. What's the problem here? That's the same as the 3FS. So you're going to have to look a little bit more closely at your context to know, is that she will do something, or you will do something, okay? If there's a feminine noun that looks like it's the subject, then you'll probably want to go with the third feminine singular analysis. Now, with the second feminine singular, for you, woman, it's going to be a prefix tav before root 1. And look at what I have attached to root 3. It's a Keurig yod. Is that a consonant or a vowel? Yes, this ending is a vowel. What do we call endings that start with vowels? You remember this? They are vocalic endings, right? A vocalic ending is an ending that starts with a vowel or just is a vowel. And so this is a vocalic ending here. So this is you, woman, will do something. And then 1CS is I, first common singular. So whether I'm a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. I use the same olive prefix. And this means I will do something. Okay? So I'm assuming that the will is here in all these forms. And there's no ending for 1CS. For the 3MP, if I want to say they will do something, then what am I going to do? I'm going to put a yod prefix, but then instead of 0 ending, I'll get a shurik on the back end. Okay, so how's that different from 3MS? They're both yods, but one has no ending, one has shurik. Okay, so they will do some verbal action. For 3FP, I'm using a tav prefix. And then look what I have here. I have, go ahead and write this down, that shiva that you see under root 3 is a silent shiva. And so the personal ending, along with the tav prefix, is the syllable na. Na. Is that a vocalic ending or a consonantal ending? It's consonantal. Okay? What I'm adding to that verb root is a consonant, right? Because the shiva here is not a vowel. It's a silent shiva. So this is a consonantal ending. And this is they, but the they is female, will do something. 2MP, y'all, where it's a masculine group of y'all, is a prefix tav and a shurik. And then y'all female is the same prefix tav, but it has the consonantal ending na, again with the silent shiva under root 3. What's the problem here? It's the same as 3FP. So you will have to look at your context to make sure you know whether that's referring to they or y'all. And then the 1CP prefix is a noon, and there is 0 ending here. Okay? And this is we will do something. Or possibly we were doing something, right? Again, the context will determine whether you should do that as future or past progressive. Now, let's take a look at a couple of patterns here. Okay? Here's the first thing. If you look on the left side at all of the singular inflectional markings, remember the word inflection refers to prefixes or suffixes that mark who's performing the action here. How many of these on the left side have 0 ending? 4. So 4 out of the 5, right? In other words, we could say all have 0 ending except 1. Look on the plural side. How many of them have endings? 4 out of 5. In other words, all of them have inflectional endings but 1. For both sides, there's always one odd man out, right? And that's the one you want to focus on. There's always one odd man out. Interestingly, the odd man out on the left side is a you woman. Okay? Over here, the odd man out is plural. It's we. Okay? So remember, those are the ones that are different. They're all the same otherwise on the left side, and then they're using either una on the plural side. Okay? What else is a kind of similarity here? Exactly. The middle 3 on both sides all begin with what letter? They all begin with tav, don't they? So if I gave you a blank sheet and said, okay, write down the prefixes that go with these 10 forms, if I had them lined up this way, you just put a letter tav in front of all the middle forms on both sides. Okay? What else is the pattern? The first two are yod on the top, aren't they? Exactly. And then on the bottom, it's aleph and nu. So let me ask you, how many consonants can be imperfect prefix consonants? 4. I have yod, tav, aleph, nun. Okay? And I have a nickname for these consonants. I like to call them the nutty prefix consonants. Okay? Nun, tav, yod, aleph. If you add the vowel kibbutz, put a dagesh forte and a kirik there to make it a kirik yod, you have the word nutty. Okay? Dr. Marshall is nutty too, isn't he? So I will be referring to these as the nutty prefixes of the imperfect conjugation pattern. Okay? So nutty prefixes, nun, tav, yod, aleph. Tav is the middle layer, and then yod's always on the top. It's only the bottom one where there's two different prefix consonants, aleph and nun. Now, if you know or remember your personal endings, or excuse me, your pronouns, did you remember ani and anohi are I? Those start with an aleph, don't they? And so does the imperfect prefix for first common singular. Anachnu is we, and there's a nu in anachnu, and that might help you remember that the prefix nun is the we. Okay, so that is the theoretical prefixes for the imperfect. Now let's actually look at them in action. When we add the vowel points to the prefixes, here's what we get. All right. Now, who remembers what a theme vowel is? When we talk about verbs, there is a theme vowel. The theme vowel is the root 2 vowel for a verb. The theme vowel is the root 2 vowel. So there's 2 vowels that are going to be important here as we look at the consistent pattern of the imperfect. Look at the vowel points under the nutty prefixes. In almost every case, what's the prefix vowel? Yeah, that's a kirik. What vowel class is a kirik? It is an I class vowel. So the prefix vowel is I class. Okay? Kirik, 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 kirik. What about the aleph? Look at that. That's a segol. What vowel class is segol? That's an I class vowel as well. What did we learn about gutturals? Remember our guttural characteristics? First, they don't take no dagesh forte from anybody. Number 2, they don't take a vocal shava. They get a compound shava instead. Thirdly, they prefer A class vowels, but aleph has a preference for what vowel? Segol. Okay? So I could put an I class kirik under an aleph, but aleph always says, hey, give me a segol. I like those. Okay? So there's my segol. So in every case, the prefix vowel is an I class vowel of one sort or another. The theme vowel, which is again, which vowel? Root 2 is holum. Okay, and that is U class, isn't it? So take a look. I have a holum here, holum here, holum here, right? Kof is root 2. And what can you tell me about this shava under the root 1 pei? It's silent. If you look to the right, your vowel is short. And our rule was, if it's short, the shava is silent, right? If it's long, the shava is vocal. Okay, so that's a short kirik. That is a silent shava. So let's mark that as such. And let's talk about how to pronounce these then. So how do I say he will appoint? Yifkod. Say that with me. Yifkod. Yifkod. Now, if I want to say she will appoint, all I do is take the vowel points I've got and switch out the yod for a tav. Easy, huh? Tifkod. Tifkod. So let's say that. Yifkod. Tifkod. He will appoint, she will appoint. Okay? Now remember, if my subject is an animal that happens to have masculine gender, I wouldn't necessarily say he, I might say it, right? If my subject is a pencil, then I would definitely say it, even though in Hebrew I'd have to choose one of the genders because all nouns in Hebrew are either masculine or feminine gender, right? Okay, 2ms is the same as the 3fs. Everybody, tifkod. So you will appoint, man, and then tifkadi. Now what happened here? What I should have had was the vowel points that I started with. Tifkod. Okay, let me get rid of that. Tifkod, and then I add a kirik yod to the dalet. What has happened here? The dalet has to take the vowel and slide over and create a new syllable, right? You remember how in Hebrew, at the very beginning of elementary Hebrew, we said every every syllable has to have a vowel, and every vowel has to have a lead consonant. So when I add a vowel to root 3, it will no longer close the syllable. Up to this point, the dalet has been keeping a closed syllable with root 2 kof, right? Yif code. That's a closed syllable. Consonant, vowel, consonant. Add a vowel to root 3, it's got to slide over. That's going to leave root 2 in an open syllable. And it's going to be pre-tonic. It's going to be before the tone. This vocalic ending is going to take the tone over here. This becomes open and pre-tonic. And what do Hebrew verbs like to do with open pre-tonic syllables? They reduce to vocal shava. Remember pakad? Add a kamate vowel to the end and it becomes pakda, vocal shava, right? So this becomes tifkodi and that becomes tifkdi. Remember, 2 shavas in the middle of a word. The first one is always silent. The second one is always vocal. Okay, so tif, no noise, kdi. Tifkdi. You, woman, will appoint. And then I will appoint, everybody, F code. F code. Now, let's look over here at the plural side. Yifkadu. This is the same thing that happened with tifkadi, right? In other words, the pointing I start with is yifkod. Add the shurik. Is shurik a consonantal or a vocalic ending? It's vocalic because the u is a vowel, right? I'm adding a vowel. And when I add a vocalic ending, it steals root 3 away from root 2. That's open and pre-tonic now, and I will have to reduce the holum to a vocal shava. Okay? So yifkadu. Yifkadu. So they will appoint. Everybody, yifkadu? And then they, female, will appoint is tifkodna. Tifkodna. Now, look at what I got here. I have the vowels I'm looking for. Kirik under the prefix, holum for the theme vowel. That's what I started with over here, right? That makes us happy. Why didn't I reduce this to a vocal shava? The reason is that na is not vocalic, is it? It is a consonant. When I attach a consonantal ending to root 3 doesn't go create a new syllable. It rather gets a silent shava and it stays closed with root 2. And so the holum remains. And that shava is silent. Now, here's where we have a little bit of a variation from something that you have normally applied as a rule. When we see a shava in the middle of a word, we look to the right, and what have we said? If it's long, the shava is vocal, and if it's short, the shava is silent. But look what I got here. I have a long vowel because holum is long, but the shavah is silent. Okay? So we have to modify our rule now. All right? Here's the modification. This matter of looking to the right and determining if a shavah is silent or vocal. Okay? So this rule, right? Long versus short. That only applies if the syllable here, where the long or short vowel is, if it's unstressed. If it's unstressed, this will always hold true. Okay? But if the syllable is stressed, and look, that holum is stressed, the accent mark there is above root 2, right? Then you can't use that rule. Okay? You can't use that rule. It's going to be a silent shavah in that case. So it's not tif code na, but tif code na. Tif code na. Okay? All right, so that's they, women, will appoint. 2MP, you men, everybody, tif kadu. Notice it's the same as yif kadu, but instead of the yod, I have the tav. All right? You women will appoint, everybody, tif kodna. Identical to the 3FP. So as you notice, if you ever have na on the end, it cannot be masculine, right? That is only a feminine plural ending. And then 1CP, everybody, nifkod. How would you translate that? We will appoint. Okay? All right, good. So you guys have got it. Isn't that awesome? All right. You can take other root letters for other verbs, and you can create the same forms, and you just plug in the vowel points. Okay, it's actually not that difficult. So let's let's look at one other thing on page 131. Of the Ross textbook, so page 131, he talks about something called the pedagogic noon. If you look where the vocalic endings are, where are the vocalic endings in my inflectional forms over here on the perfect or imperfect? Where do I have vocalic endings? 2FS, that's a vowel, Keurig yod. 3MP, and 2MP, okay? Those are the only places I have vocalic endings. In Biblical Hebrew, when I have these vocalic endings, sometimes there will be an extra noon tacked on to the end of these, a final noon. That is called a pedagogic noon. It does not in any way change the translation value or the person, gender, number of your imperfect verb. Okay? It's just an attachment that is disposable, as it were, because you would translate these the same way whether you had the pedagogic noon there or not. Sort of like in English, if you came to the word a versus the word an, those really are doing the same thing, aren't they? It's just that this is a different form of that. And in this case, it happens before another vowel. That's not the reason for this. The explanation for why some forms have pedagogic noons and others don't is still an issue of debate in Hebrew grammar. So if you guys want to do a PhD later, you can maybe go do that. Alrighty, so that's the way we form the imperfect conjugation in Hebrew.